So folks, it's really great that we've got 8 parents from one of the schools in Cambridge who've all got their act together to say they would like their sons or daughters to do their Duke of Edinburgh Award Bronze. Some of them I know have had their older siblings do their expeditions through us, whether it's bronze canoeing or walking, or silver canoeing or walking. And the school that most of them go to isn't offering expeditions at the moment. So they have come and said, could we do it through us? So that's great. I've worked with the this particular set of schools in Cambridge for the last 10 years. So in fact, this year we had the first lot that had gone bronze, silver, gold, and we had a whole load of them come down the River Spey with us in Scotland, which was fantastic. You might be inspired to have a look on our YouTube channel. They did a little quick film at the end of their Spey expedition, and it's just inspirational. Well, I find it inspirational that they're so excited and just so competent to go from the incompetence of bronze and really not knowing what they're doing to the competence of gold. I find really exciting. So for those of you that don't know me, my name's Joy Martin. I started off life as a science teacher. In fact, I trained in Cambridge. My first school was down in Canterbury, and the head said, "Oh, Joy, do you fancy running DofE?" And I said, "Oh yeah, sure, of course," not really knowing what I was taking on, but thought it was a good idea. I was still young enough to do my gold, so I ran the scheme in the school, and then I did my own gold at the same time, and I just loved it. And I suppose what I realized as a science teacher and doing DofE, that you have a different relationship with young people in the outdoors than you do in a classroom. And I really enjoyed having that relationship in the outdoors, and therefore being able to build on it in the classroom, and then the kind of pastoral care stuff and all of that stuff that kind of happens. And now the kind of conversations I have with young people and the doors that get opened in their minds of what's possible, I suppose, is why I've really enjoyed doing. So basically, I started off life as a science teacher. I then moved into youth work and did lots of outdoor stuff with young people, using outdoor education as a means of leadership training. Then I worked at the university on a degree in youth and community work, and trained youth workers to work with young people in the outdoors. And then I realized what I really enjoy doing is working with young people in the outdoors rather than working with students who I didn't see very often. And so I then moved back into direct work with young people. And that's then just at the time when DofE was changing from being, well, it still is a charity, but it's definitely more like a business now. And there weren't enough teachers in schools with qualifications to run the expeditions. So this was 10 years ago, they set up what were called approved activity providers. So if you're going to run expeditions for schools, support schools, you have to be approved by DofE. So I then had to set up a company in order to run DofE in schools. I would much rather have worked directly in the schools, but DofE didn't let that happen. So I'm highly qualified, as you'd expect. So I've got my canoe qualifications. I'm a canoe guide. I'm a white water paddler. Obviously in this photo I'm sea kayaking. I run the outdoor first aid courses, so I've got that. I'm a mountain leader, so I love being in the outdoors, and I do it because I enjoy it. The person that I do a lot of work with is Rod White, and this is him. He's actually based up in North Wales, but comes over to help me train groups over here, and then does the silver and golds that we do in Scotland or Sweden with me. And he's a level 5 canoe and kayak coach, and he's also a MIA, so he's a mountain instructor too, as well as runs outdoor first aid courses. So basically I'm saying we are very qualified, and I suppose maybe different from some other approved activity providers. You'll find them on the web. We are small, it is just me, and I then draw in other people, and the students get me. I'm on every expedition because I enjoy doing it, and I enjoy seeing them, seeing their skills develop. So that's probably different from some of the other providers. So yeah, set up Joy of Adventure, which is a DofE approved activity provider. So I jump lots of hoops, of course, in order to get that approval. These expeditions that your sons and daughters will be running are called open expeditions. So that means that they are not, it's not just run for one school, that any school can come, or any students for any school. In fact, just at the beginning of the call, somebody said, "Oh, I've got a friend whose daughter's at Netherhall, could they come?" Yep, any school can come because they're open expeditions. So it's not the school paying me directly. The contract, as it were, is between me and you as parents of what we're going to provide. So that's really the difference. I really like open expeditions, particularly those who come on their own. We get quite a lot of those that's gold. And I just think the guts to come on an expedition where you don't know anybody is amazing. Had a really lovely group of girls this year who their comment at the end was, well, we started off as strangers, and they really were strangers, and really it took their group work a long time to work. But by the end, they called themselves friends and friends for life. So that's kind of what I aim for. We've got lots and lots of bits of paper. So both Rod and I are accredited practitioners from the Institute of Outdoor Learning. We have our ALA license, so that's the health and safety license. We are providers through British Canoeing, and ITC is our first aid provider. What's great is that anyone who does any expedition with us, because we're British Canoe Union coaches, they get their paddle sports leaders, well, paddle sports awards, and then as they go on, they can get their leaderships awards. So it's just another, I suppose in a way it's another piece of paper, but it's quite good that what they do as a result of paddling for bronze for 3 days with us is they'll get their start award. Then if they go on and do silver, they'll get their discover award. So what's DofE? DofE is, the aim of it is that it's meant to be an adventure, and it doesn't matter who you are or where you're from or what your skills are or your ability, anybody can take part in the Duke of Edinburgh's Award. In fact, this year we had a girl who was blind doing her silver, and we also had a lad who did silver with us and then did gold, who had cerebral palsy and couldn't use one side of him. So that was a challenge for us and the group, but he did it, which was a fantastic achievement. So bronze is from year 9 upwards, silver is year 10 upwards, gold you have to be 16 in order to do it. And then just something to kind of drop into you now is that you don't have to have done bronze to go on to do silver, and you don't have to do silver in order to do gold. The difference is if you haven't done the award before, what you do takes much longer. And then the other thing is you don't have to finish till you're 25, but you probably don't want to tell your year what yours are going to be 13, 14-year-olds that at the moment, because they may not motivate them to get going. But for the golds, that's sometimes important. If life gets in the way, you do have to your 25 to finish. There's been some interesting research that was done interestingly by United Learning, where they interviewed all major employers, asking them what they considered were the important skills that students needed for work, and they came up with things like team leadership and confidence and motivation and problem solving. And then they got them to score the things that students did in school, which gave them those skills most. And this is what these major employers came up with. I'm sharing it with you because top of the list is Duke of Edinburgh's Award. So that's why I think every school should be doing it, because it's what employers are rating as being good in developing skills. So that's just a bit of motivation, I hope there. So bronze, oh, it shouldn't say gold there, sorry. There are 4 sections in the bronze award. There are 5 actually in the gold award, but what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through each of those 4 sections so that you get the background, because the only bit I do and the only bit you have to do in a group is the expedition. All the other bits students can do on their own, and that's where you as parents will be important, and particularly now as the school isn't running it, in helping them sort themselves out. So first section is volunteering section, and the aim of that is to inspire young people to make a difference in their community. Lots of young people do this anyway, or are doing something that can count towards it. So some of the things that people have done before, anyone who's coaching sport, so if your son or daughter's doing dance or football, and they're helping with the lower age groups, then that counts as volunteering. Lots of people volunteer in schools, so we've had people who go back to their primary school and help volunteer there, or go in the library, or they help with people who've got English as a second language and they support them. The pack that I'll send you at the end has got lots and lots of ideas in it, but this is the one which sometimes people find more difficult to sort out. So this is the one that you as parents just need to inspire them to do. I've got the levels they have to do it. So how long do they have to do it? So one section they have to do for 6 months. The other 2 sections they do for 3 months. And normally the volunteering section is the section they do for 3 months because they find that more difficult. And the aim is that it's an hour a week. You can do 2 hours a fortnight. But what DofE want is for students to be committed. So they don't want you to do or 8 hours at 1 week and then no hours for the next 2 months, so that it's something that's regular and you're building up a relationship. So that's the volunteering section. The next section is the physical section, and most people are doing this anyway. So the aim is to inspire young people to greater physical fitness through a healthy lifestyle and participation and improvement in physical activity. So it can be either as a club activity, so football or netball or basketball. If they're doing it out of school, then that counts. Or if they're in the football team out of school, that counts. Or the school team, but out of school, it's not in lessons, as it were. But they can also do individual things. So like yoga or going swimming or doing a fitness, any of those things count. The only thing that's sometimes difficult if they're doing an individual thing is how do they record it? But now there are so many apps that people use that that's the easiest way often to record it, or just a simple spreadsheet. And they write down the date they did it and then the time, and then whoever that they're doing it with then signs it off, which is easy if you're part of an activity, but there's always ways around it. I suppose to say here, the person who signs it off, or is the assessor, can't be a member of the family. Normally, form tutors are quite good at doing that. So sometimes for skill particularly, so that's inspiring young people to develop a practical or social interest skill. Lots of times people do cooking. So they cook a different cake each week, or they do an evening meal each week. You might like that idea as parents. So they then take a photo of it, and then the tutor then signs it off. But I mean, skill is lots. If anyone's doing music, then that counts. Any of those sorts of things count as a skill. So we would normally, I think, probably call it an interest or a hobby, is kind of the skill. But the aim is they're learning something. Teach, if someone's doing a coaching award, so some people could do, if you're into football, so football is your skill, learning to football coach is your football is your physical, learning to coach is your skill, and then if you're volunteering to help out, then that's your volunteering. I think that's fine at bronze level. I think as you go up through silver and gold, have it being so specific, then you just a football mad, or horses. Lots of people who are into horse riding, they often, because they're so focused on it, do that. It's not that you can't. I would just want people to be a bit broader than in bronze and silver and gold, doing it a bit more than just that. Residential is only for gold, so we don't need to talk about that. But the expedition is the bit that I want to talk about now, because that's the bit that you have to do with an approved activity provider. So the aim of it is to inspire young people to develop initiative, a sense of adventure and discovery by planning, training for and completing an adventurous journey as part of a team. So the guidelines, or DofE say, if it's bronze, so bronze is 2 days, it's a 2-day 1-night expedition, and they have to do at least 6 hours of activity. For silver, it's 3 days and 2 nights, and gold, it's a minimum of 4 days. And depending whether it's bronze is in normal country, silver, the aim is you go a little bit further away, and gold then is meant to be in wild country. The difficulty with gold canoeing is you've got to have a river that's long enough and suitable for canoeing down from our point of view. So there aren't very many of them. And in fact, our Ouse River is considered a wild country river. And I tell you, some of the bits on it are a long way from any road. So it probably is quite wild. We, as Joy of Adventure, our aim is to inspire young people to go on a journey. Okay, I want this, or we want this to be the first of many adventures that they go on. In fact, we've got some young people who did their expeditions with us who are now going off and traveling all over the world. So that's really exciting when I hear back from parents that so and so's gone to, or Caleb was in Uganda, and then he was in the States, and just different people have gone all over the place. And that's that, I suppose, is what we really want, that they do it with us and we give them the skills. We make it safe, we make it secure, we make it social, we give them the skills within a protective environment, and then they fledge their wings and off they go, which is really exciting, but maybe a bit more scary for you as parents. DofE for all expeditions have what are called the 20 conditions. So these are what all expeditions are governed by. So certainly for walking expeditions and canoeing expeditions, it doesn't matter if they don't arrive in on time. It doesn't matter if they get lost. Getting lost on a river is a bit more difficult, but it does matter if they don't keep the 20 conditions. So I'm just going to highlight a few of the ones just so that you're aware of what they are. There is a list in the pack that I'm going to send you, and of course it's online as well. So the first one here is that your team must plan and organize the expedition and describe the role you have played. So DofE changed the conditions about 2 or 3 years ago because what they were finding was that one person seemed to do everything in some groups. And the conditions apply for bronze, silver and gold. So for bronze, the aim is that at the end of the expedition, each person's able to say, I did sorted the transport, or I was the person who got everyone up, or I was the person who did the majority of the map reading, or I was the person who sorted out the food, or whatever it was. So that's what that part is. They do plan and organize it. So that is more difficult now that we don't actually meet. But it's easy that your group have already formed a group. But if they don't, we put them into groups, and then we do Zoom training to make sure that they get the planning and the organizing in advance before they actually come at the start of the expedition. Oh, seem to have missed one there. Bronze is a minimum of 2 days and 1 night. Participants must be trained to safely undertake the expedition. So part of that training we'll do in advance. We do it on Zoom, and we also have now set up a whole load of YouTube videos. So that might be something at bronze level that you as parents might need to watch with them to help them to definitely realize they must bring whatever it is with them. Sometimes people, there's always a bit of, to start with, people bringing too much stuff or a lot of cotton clothing, and then they get wet. What we want is, we want people to really enjoy it, and if they are well fed and warm and dry, then they're happy, and then they learn. As Rod says, any idiot can be cold and wet, which we've all experienced. So they must be trained, and if they're not suitably trained, so if they don't turn up to the Zoom training, then there is a risk they won't be able to come on expedition. So the expeditions are unaccompanied, self-sufficient and properly equipped. So unaccompanied means that there will be, so they will come on the first day, and that will be the training day. So they obviously need to an active part in that. And then the next 2 days of the expedition. So at bronze, they used to do a practice expedition followed by an assessed expedition. DofE changed that now, and it is just one expedition. So the start of that first day, we will be with them. And then when we feel confident that they're happy, we're happy for them to go off on their own, we will just let them go. And then we will meet them at checkpoints as they go down the river. Self-sufficient, everything they put into the blue barrels, and I'll show you a picture of that in a minute, that is what they need for the whole of the trip. So that's why bringing what's on the kit list is important, and properly equipped. Yeah, they need, if they haven't got the right stuff with them and then they get cold and wet, it's miserable. And then obviously there's risk of hypothermia, which we're not happy with. Teams must possess necessary fitness, first aid skills, and complete expedition safety. So we will give them first aid training on the training day. We also have got permission from British Canoeing for them to do their the British Canoeing online first aid, and they can get a certificate from that too. So that's really good. And then here, there is a mobile phone policy. So our mobile phone policy is, as a group, they'll have 2 mobile phones with them. One of them is the emergency phone, and that's the one that's on expedition, is during the day is turned on, at night it's not on. And the other one is the backup, and that's in the bottom of a barrel and is only used if needs to be. And they should plan and cook appropriate food each day. So we've done a whole load of YouTubes on food. Cooking for canoe expeditions is great because weight isn't an issue. So tins is fine. We are really keen that they reduce as much single-use plastic as possible. So not bringing the oh-so oats, you know, there's plastic pots, and not bringing pot noodles, because actually you can cook really well, and try and cook without bringing lots of plastic is one of our aims. So there are some of the 20 conditions, and you can read the rest yourselves. So when they decide they're going to sign up, we do pre-expedition training. So that is done on Zoom. These are the blue barrels, by the way. They're about 50 litres. So that's where they put all their kit. What we do recommend is that they have, so that is a dry bag, but a dry barrel, but that you get 2 dry bags. You can get them from Sports Direct, and one they put their sleeping bag in, and one they put the spare clothes in, because they're the 2 things that they really don't want to get wet. Anything else doesn't matter. If the tent gets wet or the mat gets wet, that doesn't matter. But if their clothes get wet or their sleeping bag, then they really are miserable. So we will do some expedition training in advance. So we'll do a Zoom session, and we'll explain what they need to do. We give them deadlines for that, and then we'll do a pre-expedition training just beforehand, just to make sure that they know what they're doing and where they're going, and that you as parents know where they're going and what they're doing. We've got up the YouTube channel, and that's where I'll put this Zoom call as well. And you'll see lots of videos there. So if I discover anything that I think is useful, there was one we discovered just recently, how to poo in the woods or something, that's very funny, which we've put on there too. So there's all sorts of different videos, but the key ones on there are the kit and the food ones, which they'll all need to look at. First aid, I've talked to you about that. British Canoe Union first aid. What they'll do is they'll do the quiz, or they'll do the training, they then do a quiz, and then they will then send us proof that they have got 10 out of 10 for their first aid training. And they can keep doing the quiz until they get 10 out of 10, so that's quite good. But also they can use that as evidence for their EDofE. And then actually on the training day, we will do canoe related incidents. So I'm really keen that we train them to be able to deal with what might really happen, rather than the things that are the highliner things. So CPR is highly unlikely on a canoe expedition. You're much more likely to trip on a stick or a tent peg and get a cut or a blister, rather than any of those other things. Sometimes people say drowning. Thank goodness hasn't happened. We do have one or a couple of rules. One of those is that if they're on the boat or near the water, the buoyancy aids are on and done up, and they get one warning. And if they aren't done and done up, and they give them the warning and they still don't respond, then we phone you up, which I guess you are happy with us doing, because you want them to make sure they keep that buoyancy aid on and done up. As part of their training, on the training day, we will go through the maps with them. Now, because of COVID, somebody wanted to know what the difference with the COVID. We used to be able to provide maps. We can't provide them anymore now. So you'll need to provide the maps. You can also laminate them if you print them off from EDofE. And then they use those maps to create their own route cards using marker pens to write on them. And nail varnish remover gets rid of it afterwards. So that's quite useful. They will then have a pre-expedition kit and equipment meeting. This is what they'll turn up like when they arrive at expedition. This was a silver group that met at Milton Country Park. In fact, all of those have just completed their gold with us. They're now all in Hills Road, a lot of them. But they turn up with blue IKEA bags like that, or laundry bags, and they put all their stuff in that. And then they load them into the barrels. One of the things that I find really helpful are these ponchos. You can get them for a £5 from Decathlon. So as well as having their waterproofs and as well as having their buoyancy on, if it rains, they can just chuck the poncho right over the top. Not particularly fashionable, but work really well. They have their own personalized tent. Something that we did a couple of years ago is we had these t-shirts and hoodies done with Joy of Adventure. And students have often each year say, someone's got their microphone on. Maybe you could turn it off. Whoever's got the microphone on. So yes, if you fancy a hoodie or a t-shirt, we can certainly organise those for the group. Food's great. We'll talk them through it. One of the things we did in COVID is they all had to cook individually. I think that will have changed by the time we get to the summer, but that may be just something to keep in mind. But for some people, that was a better thing. I think actually cooking together is a social thing, and it's also about communication and teamwork. So there's a bit of a pro and a con on having to add the COVID measures in there. Every expedition has to have an aim. And we help them with that. Sometimes they do photography, sometimes they do research. Those that are into science, they test the water as they go down the river, or they do some survey of butterflies. Some of them do bridges. There's all sorts of things. The history coming down through the fens is amazing. So we give them support on that as well. And then at the end of that, they do a presentation. As it's an open award, they can do that presentation over Zoom to us, or they can do it to somebody in the school. So that's the aim of the expedition. Oh yeah, people do litter collecting. There isn't actually, amazingly, not as much litter in the rivers anymore. If there's been a flood or lots of water coming down, then there is lots. But this was a group that came down the River Severn, and you can see they collected masses of stuff. They were a hilarious group. They got wheelie bins and trolleys and barriers and all sorts of stuff. It was great. Talking about COVID, we did put in certain COVID measures that we had to, of course. We got our good to go tick mark from Visit England, so we're very pleased about that. But some of the things that we had to do as a result of that was they had their own paddles, they had their own buoyancy aids, we had a whole toilet procedure, so that hand washing was an integral part of that. The seats in the boats were 2 meters apart, so that was good. They did bring masks with them if they had to do something that got them closer. So they had their own tents, which some people liked, some people weren't so keen on. They certainly were colder. I'm hoping that won't have to be the case this year, because certainly in Easter, it would be nice if they could share tents. But obviously, whatever the government guidelines are, we will go with, and also what you as parents want. I think it's important at the moment that we take that into consideration. So that was camping and COVID. So how does it go? It's not gold, sorry, it's the Bronze Expedition. The training will happen at a place called Hockwold, which is a beautiful, beautiful field just up the Little Ouse. It's just downriver from Brandon, those of you that know Brandon and Thetford. It's a lovely chalk stream. This is the edge of the field there. I chatted up the farmer, who's a guy called Charles, and his wife Nicola, and they really enjoy us coming and staying. And their son Arthur pulls the canoes in the trailer with his little tractor and puts them on the bank for us. So that's great. It's a lovely bit of training site for us. So when they arrive, we'll do the training. So we do some on land training to start with, and then they get on the river and they learn to paddle forwards and backwards and to find out what to do if they capsize. You can see the boats are really, really stable. They only capsize if they stand up in them, or decide they want to lean out one side, or decide they want to capsize. They're very, very stable boats. So that's not an issue. They will then talk to them about packing their kit. So these are the blue barrels. All their kit goes into them. Anything that's left over, they put into their IKEA bags, and they can go under the seats. And then they often have a small day sack, which can just be a normal rucksack, in which they'll put their water bottles, their waterproofs, the stuff they might need during the day. The aim is that over the expedition during the day, they don't open the barrels, because as soon as the barrel gets open, there's a risk it will get water into it. On the training day, we talk about stove safety and hygiene. It's really easy to forget hygiene when you're on expedition. So we stress that, and we talk to them about hand washing, and also about putting down a mat so that they don't then put all their cups and cutlery on the grass, but they've got a mat they put it on. One of the things on the first campsite at Hockwold, we have our own toilet, so there'll be 3 toilet tents set up, and then we've got a whole toilet and hand washing procedure. So there's a bucket toilet in there, which we then take away. On the Millennium Wood campsite, so the second campsite, there's an eco loo there, so it's not a camping toilet. So they will, on the first evening, so at the end of their training, we give them a chance just to enjoy being on the river, and they go off and they practice their skills. And then that night they then cook their tea, and then they camp beside the river. So this is the group that camped on at Hockwold, and it's beautiful. There's kingfishers that live in those trees opposite, and swans go up and down, and it's a magical sight there. The next day they will then set off, and they'll journey down the Little Ouse, and stop as they go. I think we'll be with them to start with, and then we will meet them at checkpoints. So we will tell them, or we'll appear on the river and meet them. It's a lovely river. It's a really beautiful river, and lots of wildlife going down the Little Ouse. And then they end up at the bottom of the Little Ouse on the Great Ouse. And at the bottom of there, we have a campsite called the Millennium Wood Campsite. And it's a large campsite which has got eco toilets. And then you'll probably see in the corner on the right of that picture, there's some shelters. So even if it's raining, they can get into the shelter that's on their side there. My computer has just decided to update something. So we're on a bit of a pause for the minute, I'm afraid. So they then will camp at Millennium Wood. This is obviously a time when they were having to camp individually. Hopefully that won't be the case. There's also tables at Millennium Wood campsite. So this was this group that started off as strangers, and you can see they definitely ended up as friends. And they cook there, enjoy themselves. They can have a fire there, which is great. And then the next morning they will then set off along the Great Ouse, and they end up going up the Wissey. What's really nice going down the Great Ouse is that the prevailing wind is in that direction, so they can often sail down there. There is a problem if the wind is in the opposite direction, and then we often have to stop the expedition, or you'll pick them up slightly earlier, but we communicate that with you if we know in advance that's going to be the case. They then finish at Wissington, which is the beet factory, and we get permission to use the big car park there, which is really handy. And they then load all the barrels back into the vans. They put the canoes back on the trailer. And once they've completed that, they will have fulfilled the 20 conditions. They will have passed their expedition section, apart from having to do a presentation and us giving them an assessor's report. So that's the end of the expedition section. They will also then get this Paddle Sports Leaders Award, we hope. So just a couple of things that I just want to kind of stress as we go on from now. One is the role of parents. I'm always really keen that as much as possible, the students do, it's their award. And so they ask the questions and they organise it. Now, I realise that there's a sliding scale going from bronze up to gold, but we really want to, as much as possible, for the students to be the ones who realise what they have to do and to pack their kit. And if they forget something, then maybe they won't forget it next time. That learning curve, I know, can be quite steep. But we're really keen to support you as parents in enabling your sons and daughters to become independent young men and women. One of the things that you will need to do as a group is to sort out where they're enrolling. So all DofE students have to enroll somewhere. They have to get an eDofE account. At the moment, I know the great group of you on this call, most are from the CAP schools or at Parkside, and they are a centre. So we can talk about that later, but all students have to have an eDofE account. And I think for Bronze, it used to be £23 that you have to pay for them to be enrolled. And then that gives you access to eDofE. eDofE is kind of like a Facebook page where they log all the activities that they're doing, and they then upload the evidence. And that's then when they submit that at the end, is then they will then get their award. If any of you did it when you were in school, I had a booklet, which I think was much easier, but everything is now online. It does mean you can't lose the booklet, but that's how eDofE happens, and everybody has to be enrolled somewhere. Groups, because it's an open award, I know there's a group of 8 of you at the moment, so that's fine. DofE canoeing groups can be 8. But if there's more people that want to join, we'll just form other groups, and hopefully there'll be other bronzes wanting to come either from other schools or from Parkside, and we'll just put them into groups. But it is up to them then, or up to you, to communicate with each other to make sure everybody knows what's happening and what's going on. Okay, we have a Joy of Adventure Facebook page as well as a YouTube, and that's where I will put photos of the expedition if you give permission to do it. You may want to go back and look at our Facebook page to see photos of previous expeditions, because it would just give you a flavour of the sort of things that we've been doing and that students do in advance. So what happens now? If you want to book onto a Joy of Adventure bronze expedition, I thought I would put here booking forms in by, and we can agree when they're in by. So I will send you the booking forms. There is then a Google form to fill out. That just is the booking form in electronic form, which just means that we have it all, your data, in an easy format. And then there's an initial payment, and then you need to get an eDofE account, and then we can then start the Zoom training. So that's the kind of process. And what I'd like to do is to give a chance now for you to ask any questions, or for those people who are watching this Zoom call later, you can email questions to us. So I'm going to stop the recording, and then people can ask questions, and we can go on from there.